Good morning, class. Today is day 2 of subtracting across zeros. So for your lesson today, I am going to solve many problems with subtracting across zeros. And I want you to grab your whiteboard or a piece of paper, and I want you to write these problems down as well and solve them with me, okay? So let's start with the first problem. 900 minus 599. You can pause the video at any time if you need more time to write down problems or work on them. So you always start in your ones column, 0 minus 9, and I cannot do that. So just like we do every time we regroup, we go to our neighbor to see if we can borrow. But our neighbor is also 0, so he can't help us either. So that neighbor is going to go to his neighbor, the 9. So there's 900s, so we're going to cross that off. And now we have 800s, and this becomes 10 for 10 tens. Okay? So now my ones place, the neighbor is able to help the ones place. So I'm going to cross off the 10 because I'm going to borrow from it and put a 9. And then this becomes 10. Because the 1 that I borrowed from that 10 moves over here. So now I can solve. 10 minus 9 is 1. 9 minus 9 is 0. And 8 minus 5 is 3. 1 plus 9 equals 10. 0 plus 9 equals 9. And 3 plus 5 equals 8. Okay, let's do the next problem. 400 minus 200. Write that down on your board. Start in your ones, 0 minus 0. I can do that because the top number is not smaller than the bottom number. 0 minus 0 is 0. Go to your tens place, 0 minus 0. I can also do that one, 0. 4 minus 2 is 2. Notice we did not have to regroup at all on this problem because all of our numbers on the top are the same or larger than the numbers on the bottom. Just because you see a problem that has double zeros on the top, do not automatically assume that you should go through and regroup like this, because that will not always be the case. All right, let's look at the next problem. 600 minus 263. Start in your ones. 0 minus 3, I cannot do that, so I go to my neighbor. Is my neighbor able to help me? No, he doesn't have anything to lend me. So I go to his neighbor. So his neighbor is going to help him out. The 6 becomes a 5, and this 0 becomes a 10. All right? So now that his neighbor helped him out and he's a 10, he has some to share with us. Okay, so we're still in the ones column and we still need help. So we're going to borrow from this 10. It will become a 9. So that our ones column will now have 10. And now we can subtract. 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 6 is 3. And 5 minus 2 is 3. And then to check my work, 7 plus 3 equals 10. 3 plus 6 equals 9. And 3 plus 2 equals 5. All right, write down the next problem, 900 minus 367. Okay, start in your ones. 0 minus 7, I cannot do that. I go to my neighbor. Is he able to help me out? No, because he's a 0 too. So he goes to his neighbor for help. The 9 becomes an 8. The 0 becomes a 10. Okay, so now his neighbor is able to help. I'm sorry, my neighbor is able to help me. So my 10, I borrow from that, and it's a 9. And my 0 is a 10. When you're doing your assignments, if you want to use different colors, colored pencils would be really good because you can erase them. And also they're fine tipped, so they'll be easy to write neat small numbers. If colored pencils help you keep you get confused with all of this, then go for it. 10 minus 7 is 3. 9 minus 6 is 3. And 8 minus 3 is 5. So if I go backwards to check, 3 plus 7 equals 10. 3 plus 6 equals 9. And 5 plus 3 equals 8. Okay, let's look at the next problem. 700 minus 510. Let's start in my ones. 0 minus 0. I can do that. I don't need to borrow. So 0 minus 0 is 0. Okay, now I'm going to go to my tens. 0 minus 1. I cannot do that. If you have 0 cookies, you can't give me 1 cookie. Okay, so I'm going to need to borrow. So all I do is go to my neighbor and borrow. So my 7 becomes a 6. My 0 becomes a 10. Now I'm able to subtract. 10 minus 1 is 9. 6 minus 5 is 1. I go backwards to check my answers. 0 plus 0 equals 0. 9 plus 1 equals 10. And 1 plus 5 equals 6. Okay, so here's an instance where you have double zeros on the top, but you only had to regroup this side. Okay? Next problem. 600 minus 598. Okay, I want you to go ahead and pause the video and solve this problem on your whiteboard or in your math journal. Press play when you are finished. Okay, if you're back, then you've already solved this problem and you're ready to check your work. If you've not solved this problem, then I want you to stop and pause the video and solve it first. Don't just wait for me to tell you how to do it. So I'm going to start in my ones. 0 minus 8. I cannot do that. So I'm going to go to my neighbor. 0. My neighbor cannot help me. He doesn't have anything to lend me. So he's going to go to his neighbor for some help. So his neighbor can help him. So the 6 becomes a 5. And my 0 becomes a 10. Now, the 10s is able to help the 1s. So my 10, I'm going to borrow from my 10, which will become 9, and my 1s will now have a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 9 is 0. And 5 minus 5 is 0. So if I went backwards, 2 plus 8 equals 10. 0 plus 9 equals 9. And 0 plus 5 equals 5. Okay? Same thing for the next problem. Write it down, pause the video, solve it, and then press play once you've solved it. All right, if you're back, then you have this problem solved, 900 minus 353. So I'm going to start in my ones column, 0 minus 3. I cannot do that. So I'm going to go to my neighbor for some help, but my neighbor cannot help me. He has nothing to give me. So he's going to go to his neighbor for some help. So my 9 becomes an 8, and my 0 becomes a 10. Okay. Now my tens place is able to help my ones place. So I'm going to borrow from this 10, it becomes a 9, and my ones place becomes a 10. Now I'm ready to subtract. 10 minus 3 is 7. 9 minus 5 is 4. And 8 minus 3 is 5. I go backwards to check. 7 plus 3 equals 10. 4 plus 5 equals 9. And 5 plus 3 equals 8. Good. Again, pause the video. Solve this problem, 400 minus 348. Press play when you are finished. Okay, if you are back, then you have solved this problem and you're ready to check your work. 0 minus 8, I cannot do that, so I'm going to go to my neighbor. My neighbor also cannot help me, so he's going to go to his neighbor. So his neighbor is going to help him out. The 4 becomes a 3, the 0 becomes a 10. All right. Now my tens place is able to help my ones. So I'm going to borrow from this 10, and I'll have 9 in the tens place and 10 ones. 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 4 is 5. 3 minus 3 is 0. So I go backwards to check my work. 2 plus 8 equals 10. 5 plus 4 equals 9. And nothing plus 3 equals 3. Very good. Okay, again, I want you to write down 200 minus 142. Pause the video, solve, and press play when you are finished. Okay, if you are back, then that means you are finished solving this problem, and you are ready to check your work. 0 minus 2. I cannot do that. So I need to go to my neighbor. My neighbor is not able to help me, so he's going to go to his neighbor. So the 2 becomes a 1, and my 0 becomes a 10. Now my tens place is ready to help my ones place. So I'm going to borrow from my 10. It becomes 9. My ones place now has 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. 9 minus 4 is 5. And 1 minus 1 is 0. So if I go backwards to check my work, 8 plus 2 equals 10. Yes. 5 plus 4 equals 9. Yes. And 0 plus 1 equals 1. Yes. All right, one more. 500 minus 309. I want you to pause the video, solve this problem, and press play when you're ready to check your work. Okay, if you're back, then you have solved this problem and you are ready to check your work. 0 minus 9. I cannot do that, so I need to go to my neighbor for help. Unfortunately, my neighbor cannot help me, so he has to go to his neighbor. So my 5 becomes a 4. My 0 becomes a 10. Okay? Now my tens place is ready to help my ones. So I'm going to borrow from this 10. It becomes a 9. And now my ones place has 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. 9 minus 0 is 9. And 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, so going backwards to check our work, 1 plus 9 equals 10. Yes. 9 plus 0 equals 9. Yes. And 1 plus 3 equals 4. Yes. Okay, let's do one for fun. Let's do a really big number, and let's see if you can do it. So erase your whiteboard. I'm going to grab my whiteboard. Let me zoom out. Okay, let's pick a really big problem. Let's say 500,000 minus let's just do it this way, 123,456. Do you see what I did there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, if you want a good challenge, then you go ahead and pause this video and see if you can solve this problem on your own. If not, just hang around and I'm going to solve it right now. Here we go. 0 minus 6, I cannot do it. I go to my neighbor. He can't help me. He goes to his neighbor. He can't help that neighbor. And we keep going all the way down until we find somebody that can help us. So our 5 becomes a 4. Our 0 becomes a 10. Okay? Now this neighbor is able to help this neighbor. So this 10 becomes a 9 and this becomes a 10. And now this neighbor is able to help this neighbor. So we borrow from this 10, it becomes a 9 and this becomes a 10. And just like before, now this neighbor is ready to help this neighbor. This 10 becomes a 9, and this becomes a 10. And lastly, this tens place is ready to help the ones place. Borrow, regroup, and we are actually ready to solve. That's simple. So it's the same thing that we did with 2 zeros. We just did it more times. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 5 is 4. 9 minus 4 is 5. Good. 9 minus 3, don't forget your comma. 9 minus 3 is 6. 9 minus 2 is 7. 4 minus 1 is 3. 4 plus 6 is 10. 4 plus 5 is 9. 5 plus 4 is 9. 6 plus 3 is 9. 7 plus 2 is 9. And 3 plus 1 is 4. So once you understand this concept, it doesn't matter how big the number is. You will be able to solve it. Okay? Have fun practicing with your problems on your PDF.